Inspired by George, the Healthy Cooking Show, showing you healthy can be delicious. And on today's show, I'll be demonstrating how to make some low gluten cookies garnished with a little powdered sugar. And for these low gluten cookies, we're going to need 2.5 cups of pastry flour, which is a type of flour that is very low in gluten, and it's ideal for recipes where you want to have like more of a tender type of cookie versus the high gluten flours that make the bread rise more and are a little bit tougher. We're also going to need a 1/2 cup of powdered sugar. We're going to need 2 egg whites, a teaspoon of vanilla extract, and a little bit of Greek brandy called ouzo, and a 1/2 pound of butter. Now we're using a 1/2 pound of butter versus margarine because I believe that butter is a more natural product, so it's much better for you if you're going to use butter versus margarine, which is something that's more of a type of butter that's kind of more man-made. It's hydrogenated. So I'm using sweet butter, 1/2 pound, and a little bit of extra powdered sugar to garnish these low gluten cookies, which are going to be really delicious, and they're great served with coffee. Really nice in the morning. So first, to get things started, we want 2 egg whites. So what you have to do is separate the 2 eggs, the egg white from the egg yolk. And for this, you're going to need 2 bowls, 1 for the egg yolk, 1 for the egg white. So what you want to do first is lightly tap your egg. And this first bowl is for the egg whites. You want to swish it back and forth. Put the egg yolk in the other bowl. Same thing once again. Takes a little bit of practice, but it makes for a lighter product. The egg whites are much lighter than the egg yolk, less calories. It makes your cookie a little fluffier too, just having egg whites. So you can see, you just swish it back and forth till you get the egg white out and the egg yolk separated. Sometimes it can be tricky, just have to be patient. And put the egg yolk aside. So now I have my egg whites in this bowl here to get started. And another thing I want to do in order to do a little bit of a food prep for this recipe is to sift my flour. So I'm going to sift this pastry flour into this bowl. But first I'm going to beat the 1/2 pound of butter. And what I've done previously is let this sit at room temperature for about an hour. You don't want the butter to be too hard for the mixture to cut through. So you want to let this sit at room temperature for about an hour so that the butter is soft. As you can see, now the butter is soft and it's fluffy. You can probably beat this for about a good 15 minutes. Just until the butter is whipped and forms peaks. And then next, you want to take your powdered sugar, and what I have here is a sifter, a hand sifter, and the reason I'm sifting my sugar is to prevent lumps. You want your cookies to be nice and smooth, so in order to prevent lumps, I sift my ingredients. And this particular sifter has a little handle. You can also shake it to help to remove the lumps. It does make a big difference because I can actually see the little lumps in here. And what you can do with the lumps also is just crush them through the sifter. I got all the lumps out there. And tap it. And then just put your mixer on low. And once again, you want to combine. You're actually creaming your butter with your sugar. Combine these until they also form soft peaks. Now next, you want to add your egg whites, a little at a time. And then add a small teaspoon of vanilla extract. That's going to give it that really nice aroma and flavor. I'm using vanilla extract, pure, not imitation. So a couple of cupfuls is about a teaspoon. And I'm also adding 1 teaspoon of ouzo, which is a Greek brandy. It has sort of a licorice type flavor. Now this can be very, very overpowering, so be very careful. But it gives it kind of an authentic flavor. And this is a great recipe. If you've been told that you should avoid gluten, this is a really good recipe because it's very low gluten because we're using pastry flour. And once again, I'm sifting my pastry flour. You want everything to be smooth. I'm using a cup at first, little at a time. This is 2.5 cups. And I always add things slowly so you can get just the right consistency. So I added about a cup there, so a cup at a time. And you just keep adding your pastry flour until you form a nice dough, cookie dough, that's not too runny or too dry. So you want to get just the right consistency. You can kind of see what pastry flour looks like. It's a little bit more dense than regular flour. Almost looks a little bit like cornmeal. And pastry flour is one of those flours you don't see too much. Pastry flour is something you have to get usually at a specialty grocery store. You don't usually find it in the supermarket aisle too often, although you might, but usually it's at a specialty grocery store. Now I add the rest of this. Okay, now that I've added all my pastry flour, we'll be right back. I'm going to start to mix this with a wooden spoon and show you what type of consistency your low gluten cookies will have. Thank you. Be right back. Welcome back to Eat Right by George, the healthy cooking show showing you healthy can be delicious. And right now I am kneading my low gluten cookies. This is actually the cookie dough for the low gluten cookies. And what I did is add a little bit more of the pastry flour, about another 1/4 of a cup, in order to make it easier to handle, because you want to form a nice soft ball of dough, because we're going to be cutting this into little round shapes. So once you've added your flour, you take a wooden spoon and mix it a little bit longer, because the electric mixer, what happens is the dough sticks to the beaters and it's very difficult to handle. So you add a little bit more pastry flour, and then you just use your hands and start kneading the dough until it has absorbed all the pastry flour and it's easy to handle, which means it's not sticking to your hands. As I'm doing here, kind of punching it down. As you notice, it's not sticking to my hands, so it's becoming the right consistency. And you want to use the dough to clean the bowl. You want the bowl to be completely clean. You don't want to have anything left over. So I'm forming a nice soft dough here. And I'll kind of take it out for you to see a little bit better. This dough is just right. You want it to be smooth. And make sure that it's absorbed all the flour and butter. what I like to do is just take it around the bowl to absorb the rest, so it cleans it up. And less mess in your dish machine. Because the bowl will be nice and clean, because the dough absorbs it all. And one way to test the dough is take a piece and just roll it in your hands. As you can see, it doesn't stick, so it's ready for baking. And I'll show you next how to form the shapes and how to use a dough cutter in order to cut more even pieces from your low gluten cookie dough. Here on Eat Right by George. We'll be right back. Well, welcome back to Eat Right by George. We're making a low gluten cookie garnished with a little powdered sugar and a clove. And I have a few cloves. A lot of times we forget that we have these even in our pantry. Cloves are actually a great food to put in your cookies, great spice. And they have a lot of health benefits actually. Things like helping reduce cold symptoms. If you have a sore throat, drinking a tea that has clove in it can be very helpful. A lot of times they make oils with clove. It's a great spice to use in our cookies. It makes your kitchen smell really good. And what you want to do next, once you have your dough, you want to form it into a log. And I'll show you how to cut them. It's very important to cut them evenly. So some are not too big and some too small. You get the most out of your dough. You can probably get a couple dozen pieces from this log here. And don't forget to preheat your oven to 350 degrees. You'll be surprised how much this dough can make, this small ball of dough. So I formed it into about a log, which is the size of my cutting board here. It's about 8 inches. And you want to cut 1-inch pieces. So what I first do is I'll take my dough cutter and score my dough first.